myself and my beautiful new wife. I'd like to thank every single person here for coming. What a fantastic meal we've just enjoyed. Yeah. Careful. Now, I'll try and do this without getting that funny bit of dust in my eye because it wouldn't go away earlier. So, bear with me. If I was to list everything I loved about this woman here, we'd be here all night, so I'm not going to. So I've tried to sum it up in one sentence, which is that we make each other better people. And to the amazement of our friends, mostly this lot here, we don't argue very much at all. Yet. That could change. Nick, I'm about to cancel Sky Sports. He's going. I'll see what I can do. Also, massive thank you to Karen and David for making today possible. Our hosts, round of applause for Karen and David. They've welcomed me into the family with open arms. And I like to think I tried to make it as easy as I could. For a day like this to come together, we've all had to make small sacrifices here and there. Becky's missed a few days out of the office working. She's making lots of phone calls, doing lots of emails to get everything arranged today. I feel a little bit like I've missed a couple of football matches that I would have loved to have. But by far and away the biggest sacrifice in the room is Dave Fox, who had to sell his Porsche for us all to be here. That wasn't that. I've been told we need a story about how we met, and it's been a bit confusing. We met a very long time ago at school, as most of you know, and then we weren't together for a long time. We've been together for the last 3.5 brilliant years. But I have got a story about Ben Searle. Now, I don't know understand the validity of this story. I've been told this secondhand, and I can't remember. But I'll tell it how I've been told it, because it makes me sound awful. So Ben lived in Mearnstoke, and the next village along was Droxford, and the next house along was Rebecca's house 3 minutes later, and then we moved over to school, shuffled down the road 5 minutes to Swanwell School. And the way I've been told it is that Ben got picked up in Mearnstoke and saved a space for Rich, waiting in Droxford. Rich then hopped on the bus next to Ben, and they had a whale of a time, till they got 3 minutes down the road to Rebecca's house, when Rich would go, "Ben, sling your hook. Becky's about to walk on the bus. And I want that beautiful, pretty young lady to come and sit next to me on the way to school." Now, Ben, what do you think? Is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty much right. Yeah.
So, I open I'd also like to thank my mum and dad. My dad would have been 60 this week, and I think I'd just like to say thanks to them. They've given me the best possible opportunity to succeed in life and meet all these fantastic people I've met and have the experiences I've had. I'm not going to look at my mum now. So I had a quick look through some bits and pieces I was left by my dad, and I was left a letter. And the letter asked me to do 3 things. He said, "Could you look after your mum and sister? Don't let his passing dim my ambition to achieve." And I got big ticks next to those 2. And the 3rd thing he'd written was, "to work hard at university." So as Meatloaf famously said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Now, I feel like I'm supposed to say that our usher, John, I feel like I'm supposed to say John is the brother that I've never had. That's what I've written down for myself. Now, up until about 10 years ago, I used to really like John. then there was this horrible day when John and I played golf at Oxford, and John beat me, and I've never beaten the bastard since. But I would just like to say we're all immensely proud of John. We threw a bit at him today in terms of organisation, and I'm very proud to be a member of your family.
Thank you.
Now on to our lovely bridesmaids. Jessica down here, Anna up here. Didn't they look beautiful today? It's lovely for us to see our little baby sisters playing such a great role and looking so beautiful on our big day. So if I could just propose a toast to our beautiful bridesmaids.
To the bridesmaids.
With a lot of deliberating over this, and at times we can be annoying, but if we need to turn to anybody for advice, it's always them. So Karen and Linda. Just for, so I'll do the other. There we go. Now, I'd just like to say as a closing thing, regardless of presents and honeymoons and everything else, I'll never see all these people in the same room again. Thank you for enjoying our special day with us. Can't believe I've made it through this without crying everywhere. Enjoy the rest of the day, and fantastic to see everybody in one place. Thank you very much.
A few weeks ago my father rang me and asked me how I was preparing for today, and he said, for God's sake, don't try and tell a joke. The worst thing you could ever do. So I'm going to leave that to Matthew. It's got a setup, but you know. We're clearly, Linda, Karen, Kev and I are delighted to see you all. I think it's been a fantastic day. I think the weather was just tremendous. I kept looking on apps yesterday, and each time I looked through the day, there was more sun and less rain, and indeed today there was no rain, so it's fantastic. For my own wedding, it felt like I popped the question and then turned up on the day. I did nothing else. Pauline and Ray flicked into gear and made all the arrangements. I noticed I proposed I proposed. I think I did. In the Cheshire Rectory in Winchester, and it's got a big A board outside saying it's now, I think, in the top 20 most romantic restaurants in England, actually. But I did nothing, and I have to say, I feel guilty in terms of I did very little for this event today. We kind of played a role, the parents, of making sure the kids made decisions and didn't stare at decisions, and we kept moving them along. But I can't even say that. Rebecca and Richard did a fantastic job. They did from end to end. All the nitty-gritty, all the different suppliers. I mean, someone asked me earlier about the table layouts, flowers, all the kind of areas where you can break down in terms of supply chain and people can let you down. It's been fantastic. Food. We had an awesome time tasting food. We flew you in from Australia just to try the food. We went to Spain with the bakers to test the wine. We had a fantastic. We had about a dozen bottles of white wine.
It's been tough, hasn't it?
Yeah. We created a short list, and then we worked our way through the white ones. So we've enjoyed it. I think the fact that it's the first of the next generation of weddings. Everyone's been involved, from the kids all the way through. The girls being bridesmaids, Jonathan. It's been a fantastic family event. It's been a great pleasure to lead it on. So Rebecca, what can I say about Rebecca? I've talked about the first generation. I think I mentioned she's the first of the next generation. She was obviously the first child in our family. She was the first child in the bigger family. Yeah. And she's been a delightful role model on the whole journey. Very cool, stress-free, and very confident. So,
fairly stress-free.
But she's gone through most things. She's been the person that's gone through the bush first time every time for us, from school to college to university and all that. So it's been an interesting journey. I think some of the highlights, if I think about some of the things maybe where I can educate Rich a little bit about Rebecca, is I remember she arrived about the same time as my first car. And, we'd moved into Hampshire, and our parents and the in-laws were everywhere in Kent. So we did an awful lot of motorway driving back and forth. And she spent most of her first 6 months doing about 90 miles an hour on the outside lane of the M25. My father did speculate that she might end up being an astronaut. She was getting so acclimatised to travelling at such great speed. With a reckless father, all I can say is that she's got my driving habits. She drives a bit more like me than a geography teacher, I'd say. So that's excellent. She's a bit stubborn. She was the first child to kind of refuse to get in the bath. And, we did nickname her Pathetic Pauline. Pauline's the name of both her grandmothers, actually, Pauline and Kit and Pauline Fox, and her middle name was Pauline. So she got named Pathetic Pauline because of the fuss she made every time she had her hair washed. And so she was the first child to refuse a bath, and she was the first child then to actually have a bath fully clothed. What Mum and Dad decided was the course of action that she had to follow. So she was the first child to. I remember the bath in Hillcrest Gardens. So how was your dress up? She was the first child of ours to throw herself out of an aeroplane at 15,000 feet, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
Over New Zealand.
Yes.
She was also the first child to do it twice. The video camera didn't work. So if she'd been a proper fox, she'd have asked for her money back. But she actually insisted on going up again and throwing herself out the same door and coming back down to ground in the same way. So that's quite unique. So she's a little bit reckless. She's also got a reputation for being a bit clumsy, and there was a time when, again, to reference my father, he's had many a car, and not many have gone over 35, I'd say. So there was a time when Rebecca passed the test, and I carefully negotiated, waiting for the right moment when he was about to trade it in, to swoop in and make him an offer he couldn't refuse. And we rushed back to Hampshire with this fly green Fiesta, I think it was. Firefox, a Fiesta Firefox, yeah. Or Firefly. Anyway, she became the first grandchild to write off her grandfather's car. Within weeks. She chose to try it with head-on collision, I think, wasn't it? And it was quite some time ago, but it was on the cusp of health and safety took over everywhere. And I remember driving to the accident and getting a running commentary from Karen and arriving to a floodlit scene with firemen and police. The road was closed, the accident scene was floodlit, and there was actually a body in the road. And, I really did worry and fear the worst, but the body was the other lady. I think the fireman had opened the door. She'd had an attack of the vapours and passed out on the road. But they couldn't touch her. But they had to leave her there until the ambulance arrived. So we're in the middle of the winter, a floodlit scene, and there's a body in the road, and that body's only in the road because we're busy waiting for the ambulance to arrive. So it was all rather a large drama.
Dad, if I remember rightly, we then went on to the Saints game when we realised.
Engaged the gear and went off to see Fulham. What was the score? I think the other thing, she can be reckless when you least expect it. So we were on holiday with the Bakers in Turkey. We'd been there a week or so, and Rebecca was flying in. I'm not sure why you're flying in so late, but you're flying in maybe from work. And Jessica, I think at the tender age of about 13, had spent a long time waiting to go for a drink in a club. we've been making the appropriate noise when your big sister arrives. I'm sure she can take you out and you can have a great time. She's a sensible one. The sensible one. That's what we know about. Anyway, a few hours later, Jessica arrived and spent the rest of the night with her head in the bath, I seem to remember. Very much worse for wear. So you can't trust her to do the sensible thing. In fact, Jessica's never had a good weekend without her head being over the side.
Your wedding speeches, though, you can't.
I think the final thing, and I guess it's my opinion, but I would say Rebecca is very considered. You know, she's got some of these traits, but she likes to be sure, she likes to build up confidence, and then once she's got that confidence settled in her mind, she lets the handbrake off and off she goes. And I think that's best represented by her skiing. As a child, we took her skiing almost every year. And I remember arriving in ski resorts, hiring skis, paying for lift passes, costing me an absolute fortune, and then we'd spend a week waiting for Rebecca to come down the mountain. So Jonathan would be down in 20 seconds. Jessica would insist, being far less capable, but being a stubborn little third child, would insist on sticking to him like glue and coming down at reckless speeds. And then we'd all rise at the bottom in a neat little line and look up. This figure would spend the next 15-20 minutes, 87, 88, 89, down the mountain. But yeah, I went skiing last year. We all went, the kids and ourselves, and I couldn't keep up with her. She motored everywhere. I tried to follow her, I couldn't, and she did it with a fantastic style and grace. So it's a great representation of Rebecca's approach to things. She invests a bit of effort in understanding it, and then she's off and going. So Rich, you've gained a fantastic, I think, wife. I think you appreciate it. I can tell by your words. You're very pleased with what you've found. I think she's smart. She's organised. You know, she's considered. She's a beautiful inside as out. And I think you made a fabulous choice. So, it's my Rebecca. A few farmers will be delighted with that swift change. But we are delighted. I mean, Richard's, has it been for 3.5 years?
Yeah. I don't know, I was a bit nervous, I think. Thereabouts.
He's a super boyfriend and he's been a fantastic fiance. And I think, you know, we talked about the joke with Bryn, etc. But he won Karen's heart years ago when he was reserving Rebecca a seat on the school bus. Believe it or not, so she's never had a bad word said about him since. I found it quite hideous. I found it quite hideous because I think if Richard really thinks about it, I don't think he's ever at dinner off his lap in front of the TV in our house. Every time Richard comes to our house, we have to sit at the table. we have table manners. We have 3 courses. He has wonderful cheese and lovely wine. And, it's amazing.
Oh, is Richard coming?
It's amazing. I'm not making this up. The last time he came, the doorbell rang. And I was actually hoovering the stairs. a bit like Gromit. Was it Wallace? No, Gromit. My eyebrows knitted in the middle, and I thought, I've been stitched. The only reason I've been asked to hoover the stairs is because bloody Richard's done it. So Rich, I think it might change. The other thing is, you know, we are delighted. It's good to have another chap in the family, and we're delighted to have another golfer. So, you know, every time we go off with Richard, Karen says, "Make sure Richard does well." Make sure we have to give him a ridiculous amount of shots sometimes. And today I picked him up at 6:45 and met Linda, gave her a little peck, and she said, "Make sure he wins." So John, you're like this. So today we get to the ninth tee, and I look at the card while the boys are chatting, and it's Richard and me both in the same place, and he's on the tee, and he hits the green. So I sort of threw myself at the ball and managed to miss the green.
Well done.
Well, it's true. I I'll play a lifetime shot and flop it high. He worked to treat as perfect shot. And he missed his putt. So John, what was my first putt like?
A bit firm.
Yeah. So anyway, well done. It's a good win. But it's been hard work. It's much love. The other thing Richard did well was that he actually asked me for my daughter's hand in marriage, which was delightful. I put him on my favourites on my iPhone the very next morning. Texted to tell him, well done, you're in. He's put up with my sock envy. I noticed your socks. I noticed those green and purple dotted ones the other way, and I went out and bought some. He's going well with my casual shoe envy as well. I've been caught a few times going, no, nice shoes, Rich. In the porch. And I've constantly looked at his TV and can't understand why his picture's so much better than mine.
We've got a new TV coming then.
Well, but anyway, look, I'm delighted to welcome you to the family. The Fox family, the bigger Kits and Joneses, all of us, you're very welcome. It's great to have you along. Rich and I did talk about the difficulty of referring to Richard, to Colin, and to Ray, both of which were kind of ripped from us prematurely. They obviously made a great contribution to both the kids, and I think they're very proud of the outcome today. So I thought it would be, I think it's experiencing going to football and falling back in love with the theatre of football, but when 32,000 people show their appreciation for people, they clap. So I thought we should just give them a great round of applause. Let's do it. Finally, how am I doing on the time, guys? Who's in front? Who's in front? So finally, I'd ask you to raise your glasses. They're building a great life already, a new home, a fabulous future. So let's say it's been a wonderful day. The bride and groom, Mr. and Mrs. Shephard, Richard and Rebecca.
Richard and Rebecca.
May not know this is actually a double celebration for Rich, because yesterday, after winning the Clacton by-election, UKIP secured their first seat. So they told me to stay clear of politics. But anyway. The speech itself, it is an honour, but it's also an ordeal. I've noted a few pauses on my cue cards here. That's where you're meant to be laughing at.
It's okay, I'm laughing.
Yeah. But I also apologise if it seems a bit thrown together, but I realised early this morning that there'd been a horrendous miscommunication. The best man's peach. But anyway, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Matt, and I've known Rich for the best part of 20 years now. I'd describe it as a friendship that's been characterised by bickering, football, bickering about football, and arguments that I've won. It's worked for us. But when Rich first asked me to do this, I will admit it was a bittersweet moment, and I've spoken to other best men and they've admitted the same. Of course I was happy for the guy, but you also realise there's going to be this shift in focus away from best mate duties to husband duties. And I did realise there would be a gap of sorts created, and I wondered, you know, if it would be possible to fill it. So I began to think about what makes Rich rich. And I thought, naturally, this could serve as both a basis for this speech and a reminder to Bex of what she's letting herself in for. For the sake of time, I've limited to what I consider to be his 3 big character traits. And for the sake of comedy value, well, hopefully comedy value, I've completely disregarded the good points. But anyway, first up, and I think this is most apparent within 3 seconds of meeting Rich, is that you'll recognise that he's a guy that's not afraid to air his opinions. I'm not going to share some of his more colourful views with you today. I understand there's 1 or 2 in here that hold him in quite high regard, and I don't want to offend anyone either. But what I will say is that the guy has an amazing capacity to have an opinion on absolutely everything. Prior knowledge is also an optional extra. He's told me on multiple occasions that no matter what it is, I'll give a film as an example, he'll tell me that it is the worst film of all time. And it's quite some statement from someone that hasn't actually seen it. He's straight down that way. I remember I once asked him, I said, Rich, do you think you're sometimes maybe a bit guilty of judging a book by its cover? He just said yes. I can't argue with that, can I? But for those of you that know me, you'll know that I'm no shrinking violet either when it comes to opinions. And so the combination of Rich and I together can sometimes lead to argument. Healthy argument, but argument. However, rarely do I get the opportunity where I can say something, I can express an opinion, and Rich has to sit there in silence. So, excuse me if I go a bit off piece now, but please appreciate how therapeutic it is. Rich. Radiohead are a better band than Star Sailor. I think and Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan is a better film. The others also appreciate what a rare occasion this is, so I'd like to say a few things on behalf of them. Dave first. Podrick Harrington is a better golfer than Lee Westwood. There's no 2 ways about it. Also, you owe him a beer. And on behalf of Britain, I'd like to say that Steven Gerrard is a better footballer than Paul Scholes. For the record, I completely agree with you, mate. Notice how we always tended to tackle the big issues. Ordinarily, he'd have responded with one of his infamous rants by now. And by the way, these are something to behold. If you haven't already, I'd recommend sitting with Rich while the news is on. The guy descends into this rage about, and he'll storm off the bed at the end, furious. The news bit would have must have been on something like a leaking roof at an house factory. He will find outrage. But one of the funniest things about this aspect of Rich is watching how people try to deal with it. And I know, because I lived with Rich and Bex for the best part of 2 years, and I noticed that Bex would at first try to sort of humour him, before steadily just ignore him. And that was one policy. I used to try and drag him back onto the fence when he'd pitched his view firmly on the extreme, one other side of the fence. Right as well, not my right hand. But the best policy I've seen is Linda. And I'm not sure either her or Rich will remember this. And it wasn't a rant as such, but the principle applies. Basically, Richard got himself injured at school. Nothing fancy. He was walking along and he just went over on his toe. And believe me when I say it, we did not hear the end of this. I'm still convinced, I think he was 16 at the time, so yeah, not a nipper. I'm still convinced he went to the school nurse and went through it with her. But I vividly remember walking up his drive. Rich was limping behind me because I was going round his later that evening. And I remember Rich limping behind me, and I was bracing myself for Linda to throw sympathy the way of her only son. Now, I didn't know Linda quite as well as I thought I did back then. Because when we got in, and Rich was just about to launch into his explanation of how injured he was told in no uncertain terms to pull himself together and stop acting like a soppy tart. Honestly, it was a magical moment. It was a magical moment. And so, Linda, I thank you, because since that day, I've looked to adopt a similar, with very great success. I think he respects you a bit more than he does me. Because fears you more than he fears me. But yeah, thank you for that, Linda. Magical moment. But Rich's ranting leads me neatly into another characteristic of his. And this is most apparent when his ranting gets the better of him. And it sounds like a cliche, but the guy does tend to speak before he thinks. And he's actually mastered this capacity quite well. I remember one time we were going to one of our away days up to, Saints were playing away somewhere. And Rich had gone to bed the night before and he'd been watching the snooker on the red button on BBC. But he got tired and he just turned the TV straight off with the red button still on. Woke up in the morning, turned the telly on, the red button was still on. And it was just, as you'd expect, the news on a continuous 10-minute cycle. Rich got in the car and declared that it was an absolute outrage. The BBC was broken. And worse still, it just hadn't been fixed. When we actually worked out what had actually happened, the tail was firmly between the legs. But another example is when a group of us were on holiday once. And don't ask me how this subject came up, but we were going around the table saying who our man crush was. Honestly, don't ask me who it was. It was all very jovial, and we were basically all playing up to our stereotypes. I think I said William Shatner. Dave, I think you said Gordon Brown. Yep. Rich said David Beckham, and we all thought, well, he's actually quite a good-looking chap. And I thought, from some angles, you may be able to argue that he is, he might be a role model for some, but it didn't really fit with Rich, and it wasn't really following the cult hero route we were going down. He often does before he thinks as well, and this was most apparent when we went to McDonald's once. And everything was going swimmingly until the McFlurry landed on Rich's desk, on his table, sorry. And there's no easy way to describe this, but he just started sucking the spoon. You could argue that with the spoon head sort of submerged in the ice cream and the spoon handle itself hollow, you could argue that it did look like a straw in the McFlurry. But I would counter this with Rich's final quality is arguably his most defining, and that's that he is the oldest man you are ever likely to meet. He has always been like that. His ideal Friday night involves cup of tea, slippers. Is it Midsummer Murders? I like Midsummer Murders. In bed no later than 9. No later. Noise frustrates him. Technology just dumbfounds him. He may be an old man, but he's our old man. And he genuinely is one of the nicest guys you could ever wish to meet. He's funny in a self-deprecating way. Kind, he's always there for you. What did I say? And I noticed that, and I've never told either of them this, but naturally, for a long time, Rich wasn't the same guy after his dad. And I'd argue it stayed that way until Bex came on the scene. And just gone, Bex, how great does she look? I tended to hang out with John in the main, and there he is over there. And Jess had also come along for the ride when me and John went doing the big boy stuff. But we get into all manner of bumps and scrapes. John was often the fall guy. I think his parents only realised that about 10 years after the event. But anyway, I used to get the impression that Bex hanging out with other people of her age would just sort of roll her eyes from afar. But I like to think I've sort of won her over since she's been with Rich. And when I do stuff like forget to water the plants when her and Rich are away on holiday, I like to think she sees that as more as endearing now.